Amazing breakfast. What a beautiful way to start the day. And every little bite is gourmet. And we have cappuccino and tons of other things. Oh, these are good too. And look at the way to get your honey. Awesome. It's a Friday morning and everything is closed because of the coronavirus. I guess people are still going to work, but all the museums, all the attractions, we were supposed to have a little cruise, everything is canceled. The theater is closed. So we are seeing a part of Buenos Aires that we would not have seen otherwise. Yeah. That's how it is. One door closes, another door opens. Why is it that birds always love statues? Beautiful monument. Beautiful day. Look at this. The pebbles are not loose. They look like they are loose, but they are glued together somehow. Very smart. That's why you don't see pebbles all over the place.
Driver
Walter. Hola, Walter.
Walter ranked within the best 3 drivers of his family. It's a great honor. He will be driving us a little bit through Buenos Aires, and then we'll be heading to Tigre, which is the main goal we have today. Now, San Martin Square has different views. This is from the bottom of the square, where we have a memorial to the soldiers, the Argentinian soldiers who died in Malvinas War, the Falklands. The memorial is just behind the trees you see on the left, all of those black plaques on the wall. And the memorial was located in 1990, 8 years after the war, just across the avenue from the English Tower. Great message we sent. In case they didn't notice, English Tower is this one on the right. No longer English Tower. Since 1982 we call it the Monumental Tower, since the war. The tower is much older than that. It's from 1916 and it's remembering the first centennial, the first 100 years of our, let's say, independence, but actually it's honoring big date, the revolution of May Maybe you recall that from the beginning of your tour at Plaza de Mayo. The revolution happened on May the 25th of 1810. That's one of the main dates we celebrate. We tend to celebrate a few dates important. May the 25th of 1810, and the other one is July the 9th of 1816. That's officially our independence. And we started building up the country after that. And the country always had this very intense social contrast in between the very wealthy, rich people and the poor classes of Argentina. And we saw the origin of the middle class, of the blending of all this. We talk about the large immigration we had in Argentina. Do you remember, did you go to La Boca? Remember La Boca?
Yeah.
Many days ago, but you went to La Boca? La Boca was the neighborhood of the Italians, all the immigrants who came, Italians massively. The children of those immigrants, they could afford studying for free in Argentina because we had the public education. And those classes, after the first immigrants, became the middle class of Argentina. That was very, very large. As it's happening all over the world, our middle class is shrinking. It's getting less and less. But still, it's one of the main things that where we find cohesion in the Argentinian society. But then, when you take a look to the city, even more in the touristic part, you find this contrast in between the very poor or humble south and the very rich north. This was the fertile ground for a movement like the one founded by Mr. Juan Perón and Eva Duarte took place in the 1940s. When I say Eva Duarte, I'm talking about the very famous Evita. What do you know about Evita?
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
She died.
Yes, unfortunately that was not Evita, but it talks about her life. It was Andrew Lloyd Webber. Evita died in 1952 and the play is from 1977. We all know. What else? What do you know?
She died of uterine cancer.
She died of cervical cancer. Cervical cancer.
So Perón's first wife and Evita, they both died from cervical cancer.
She came with the soap operas, and then she did a few more. Kind of acts as the father of everybody. At least that was the feeling during Perón's time. And the foundation was so big and did a massive changing from many angles. Take a look to the building built by the foundation to promote social assistance. It's here on the right. It's that neoclassic building you see. Nowadays it's the Law University. But that was one of the first massive buildings built up by Perón. Big change, right, from the French academic. The message here is, here we are, we're present, we're going to give what you need. And just next to is a big flower we have in town that used to open in the morning and shut down in the evening. Yes, not anymore. We don't know why, it's not the virus. We don't blame the virus for that, but it's been like closed for almost a year. But it had this mechanism where it opens and closes. That's from the early 2000s. The only monument we have related to Evita is here. When we talk about the controversial topics on tours here, we use the controversial topics a lot. This is one of them. But there was a big contrast of interest in between Perón and the high class. At the beginning, promoted, or actually pointed out, marked by Evita. My idea is that we get off, and we'll see if we can park here. We're in the middle of the avenue, but we'll take a few minutes. I'll show you the monument, tell you a few things about her, and then we'll complete the story on the back.
Wow, that's nice. Oh, I wish we could go closer.
Lady, it's gorilla. Well, think that we are in the center of the resistance to Perón's government. It was a massive government with a large influence from National Socialist ideas. the National Socialist ideas were priming on the regimes of Europe. Italy with Mussolini, Franco, Spain, Hitler in Germany. But they had this massive sharing and acceptance here of the state intervention, that the state should be present in the life of the people. And from the state, they were providing the assistance. That's why Evita became so popular. And it's not a minor detail that when she came into this power position, because she never had an official charge, but Perón was sending her here, there. She was like a magnet of people, and she was dealing with many hot issues of the government. She used to deal with the unions, and she took care of the social assistance. Because actually that was the role of the First Lady, but not in the way Evita did it. The role of the First Lady was supposed to gather money, some fundraising, and provide little social assistance. She dissolved that and said, we are going to do something big about the social assistance. And the people started getting apartments, the children toys, hospitals, schools, everything built up by this foundation that became like a parallel cell, a parallel institution to the government. And it was kind of competing at some point. Evita gathered so much power from here. She used to work 12, 14 hours a day, receiving the people, asking them what they needed, going to different places, checking what the people needed. And she was only 26 years old when all this began. 26, because imagine, the end of the story for Evita is in 1952 with the cervical cancer, and she was 33.
Oh, that's
33 years old. Right when Evita died, that was the end of Perón's government. But not physically, because the government lasted 3 more years. It was the beginning of Perón's second term. Now, it happened that Evita did a big, massive lobby to approve the women vote, and that gave another massive support to Perón in 1951 for the re-election. Many people wanted her to be the vice president, and information back and forth. Supposed to know that she was sick at that point. The cancer took like a year, just wipe her out. And just a picture how the feeling of those days was. The presidential residence was here, there was a wall. Now it's that huge building on the bottom, that's a public library. That's from the 1970s, behind the tree here is the public library. But the house had many people praying for her, and on the side, some other did graffiti saying, Viva el Cáncer. People were cheering for the cancer that was taking Evita from here. That was the kind of contrast I'm talking about.
But why is that? Why?
Why?
Why were they so much against what
Why
she was
were
doing?
they so much against her? Can you guess?
Yeah, the rich don't want to give away their money.
Exactly. But that's not only Evita, that happens all over the world. The main difference is that Evita and the government, not only her, they started forcing the factories, the businessmen, and then the unions to do donations for the foundation. That's how the foundation found most of the money, with the one they built all this social work.
That was what I mean. From the movie and everything, there was a lot of corruption though involved too. There was like 2 for the foundation, 1 for me.
The money for, imagine Evita died 33, then Perón. No one ever proved that they had like all this money gathered somewhere. There was a different use, and there was a very indiscretional use of money. That's what I believe. We still talk about corruption in those days. On how they decided the money had to be used. Because they did not build a rich empire. There are no descendants of Perón owning anything or big business or Evita. Even though we could say, oh, maybe yes, they built up their fortune. It was the case of many other politicians, but not them. So the corruption had to do much more with something classic of the Peronismo, assignment of money and how is that used. And then you go to a march, you go to protest, you get money for that. So how does it work? Unions, many poor people, they still do it. And that's actually and unfortunately a bad behavior of many sectors in Argentina. But that was the main allegation. That was it. And imagine the Perón's government came to break with the dominance of the US companies. So he was like against the big empire. And that radical position, and then the breakup with the church, was the end for Perón. He could not be after 1955. But there is a comeback. You want to hear the story?
Yes.
We go to the bus, not now. The only thing I want to say, 1997, we honor Evita here with the monument. Evita seems to be like holy part. There's sort of a kind of cloth represented behind that looks like a waterfall. Do you see it? Mm-hmm. That's the Argentinian flag, because it has a sun. If you see it from the top, is the Argentinian flag. They were planning to build a mausoleum memorial here. The monument was supposed to have like 7 more figures, or actually 7 more statues representing the kids, the workers that they used to call descamisados, but the money was not enough. So we only got Evita. One reference. Evita, the height of the monument of her image is 3.3 meters. That's almost 10 feet, but 3.3 meters makes reference to the 33 years. We have a few interesting numbers that keep coming back when we talk about Evita. 33 all the time, and 825. One of her programs, the first one she did on radio, used to finish at 825, but everybody in Argentina that had access to the records remember when the radio came and say at 8:25 of July the 26th, Evita reached immortality. That's the hour of her day, of her death. 8:25. But 33 is much present. Big number, right? 33. Let's go to the bus, and we keep talking on the bus. You get closer. Be careful first with the mud here. ¿Qué cosa, Walter?
Do you have more singles?
A few, yeah. McDonald's. Not bad. Like what? It's 70 to the dollar. $1 for French fries and a Big Mac.
Tigre. We're heading to Tigre. Tigre will be our next destination, the next stop, and we'll reach there in about 40 minutes. We'll still pass by the Law University and the flower on the right.
We're gonna get another chance at the flower. I'm glad we get to see this. I like it.
You can see on both sides the houses from the old days, from the early 1900s.
This is Palermo.
Left and right. This is what we call Barrio Parque. And on the right are a few two iconic buildings of Palermo. One is the Renault Museum, offices on the right, and the Malva Museum, the Latin American Art Museum.
Closed because of the coronavirus.
Back to Evita. I have a great question here. For instance, why do my family hate Evita Perón? By the way, this is one of the topics we can't speak about on a Sunday dinner table on Christmas, New Year's Eve. Political reference from Evita Perón. Evita is here, the husband Perón is on the right, and you can also see the picture. Who are we talking about? Then you will find another guy who was Néstor Kirchner, he's a contemporary president, who was the husband, because he passed away, of the actual vice president. This lady called Cristina, that she was president of the country a few years ago, and Mr. Alberto, our actual president. I'll pass the panettone box around if you want to check it. Unfortunately, we're going to drive by one of the main soccer stadiums of Argentina. And I say unfortunately because I hate this team coming here. And I also hate the one in the south. I hate both. Hope one day they will disappear. I don't want these teams with us. No, they are the most popular teams. I have my heart, it's like blue and white. It's called Racing. We are in the south part. These here are the chickens. Racing is known as the academy. These are the chickens. And that's the hen house. You see the hen house on there. El gallinero. We also call it the monumental buildings. It's quite impressive to watch a match inside. And it has a space for, has capacity for 65,000.
Wow.
Not people, they are not people. They are on the way to become something close to a human being. One day, maybe, one day. Barbarians, chickens, all of them. Same the boca. They're the same bad thing. Pollo, muy bien. But we don't say pollo for them, we say gallinas. Gallinas. Gallina. The gallina is a chicken. So we replaced North Boca in the south, right? Coming back to Evita, coming back to the story. We have the body being moved around, we have a big psychosis.
You'll think it's strange when I try to explain how I feel, that I still need your love after all that I've done. You won't believe me. All you will see is a girl you once knew, although she's dressed up to the nines, at sixes and sevens with you. Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is I never left you. All through my wild days, my mad existence, I kept my promise. Don't keep your distance. Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is I never left you. All through my wild days, my mad existence, I kept my promise.
As big as the one with the virus. Now everybody talking about the body. Where is the body? The supporters were supposed to be tracking the body, and the militaries were getting crazy on all the stories and all the events that started happening with the people surrounding the body. one of the guys that was looking after the body, in his house, because he had the body in his attic, one night he shot his wife that was pregnant in a very confusion episode, because he thought the supporters broke in the house and were trying to get the body.
Oh, by accident.
By accident, yes, by accident. After this situation, the army said, what are we doing? We can't have this body here anymore. So they did an arrangement with the Vatican. They gave a call to the Vatican, not open speaking, not in 0800 of the Vatican. They just called a contact they had. And this gentleman, he managed to do all the paperwork and facilitated the way out of the body of Evita. As the wife of an immigrant who died in a car accident. So as Evita was embalmed and taxidermized, the body was smaller. They put some bricks inside, so it looks a little bit heavier. They planned all this, and they buried Evita in Italy, in Milan, under another name, Maria Maggi de Magistris. And Evita remained in Italy for 13 years, with an aunt taking flowers every 15-20 days. Family had no idea where she was. And Perón, already remarried in Spain, as the political leader the country was looking for, and coup democracy in Argentina. Until in 1970, the brave supporters of Mr. Perón, the radical guys, tough guys, they kidnapped and killed in retaliation the general of the army called Aramuru, that was like the main enemy of Perón. When they kidnapped and killed Aramuru, the situation here was like another guy in charge of the coup gave a call to Perón and said, General, we need to do something about this because your boys are out of control. Among the things they work out with time, they gave the body of Evita back to Perón. And a few years, actually months after, Perón was allowed to be part of the Argentinian politics again. That was the beginning of the great comeback. Perón, until he came back in 1972, and then finally got the presidency in 73. He got the body back in 1970. They kept the body of Evita in the living room of the house Perón had in Spain. But she was involved. It was okay, right? She was involved. No problem. So they restored the body. If it's creepy enough, I have more. So then Perón comes back with Isabel, the third wife, and Perón with Isabel, husband and wife in the presidency. They won the election with so bad luck that Perón died 9 months after he began his third presidency. Who took over? The wife. That was not the problem. That is the wife, Mrs. Isabel. The problem is that she had no preparation at all, and she had no support, and she lasted 2 years in power. One night, the same guys, the same radical supporters, kidnapped and killed the general Aramuru, the enemy of Perón, the one that headed the coup against Perón back in the 1950s. They broke into Recoleta, the cemetery where Aramuru was resting. They kidnapped his body again, and they traded for Evita. They said, we want a real leader back in Argentina. They wanted more things, but the main one was the comeback of Evita, the body of Evita. And that's how Evita finally came back. So now we have Isabel, Mrs. Martinez de Perón, in power, keeping in her living room Perón and Evita.
That's the funniest thing ever.
The 1970s were very crazy. So Perón and Evita, they buried Perón as the president in a major cemetery, and they gave Evita back to the family, and the family disposed the body in Recoleta Cemetery. Is that creepy enough? Creepiness level? In 1981, somebody broke into Perón's mausoleum and cut his hands off. So when I asked my dad, what happened with the hands of Perón? And he said, oh, there was so much corruption in that government that those guys wanted to prove with the fingerprints that Perón had a secret account in Switzerland. Like, oh my God. Because, but that's the story everybody tells.
Don't keep your distance.